Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It's Kim, and I came back from a holiday to see my two older brothers. And for this video, I kind of want to discuss Gamesworkshop's best game system, and that is the Middle-earth strategy battle game. So for this video, it's more of a voiceover, so you can sit back, paint a little bit, or make some army lists while I kind of discuss why this game is very underappreciated, but it is an amazing game system. So up first, I'm going to discuss all of the pros for this game system, and towards the end, I might discuss a couple of the cons for Middle-earth strategy battle game. So the first pro I'll have to give for MESBG is that the game system is very tight and well written. Now, I'm speaking on this point from my past experiences. I played MESBG from 2018 to about 2022. That was my main game system, and I played over probably 500 games of that edition. I've only played 5 games of this current edition at the Nova Open. However, this game system, so MESBG, has always been one that is very tight, very consistent, and easy to learn. So to further expand this point, I kind of want to bring in my own personal experience. When I first learned this game in 2018, my friend Robert Cron wanted to teach me it, and he let me read the rulebook. After about 30 minutes, I was getting a little bit distracted. It was making sense, but I kept asking a couple of questions here and there. So Robert decided, let's play a 400-point game. And by the end of the 400-point game, so maybe an hour, hour and a half, I pretty much knew how to play. That's how well written this game system is. Now, I am not saying during that single game I was proficient, I could, do really well at an event, I could beat people, but within an hour to an hour and a half, I knew the game. For me, this showed how well written this game system truly is. But that's the beauty. Even though I believe the rules are relatively simple, the amazing part comes from the decision making and the tactical placement of the miniatures. So the rules, in my opinion, are relatively simple when compared to Warhammer the Old World. However, because the rule set is more simple, a lot of the strategy comes from decision making, positioning, and just calculated movements. Again, this isn't to say having a simple rule system is bad. I believe, in fact, it makes the game more competitive because now actual skill like decision making, the nuances of that come more into play rather than gotcha moments or having 50,000 special rules. On to the second pro of playing MESBG, I would actually say it is the monetary cost. Now, this can be slightly debated because if you play certain units, they are either resin and or pewter. However, coming from Warhammer the Old World, coming from Age of Sigmar and all the other game systems, I do believe MESBG is very cost efficient, especially because Games Workshop creates some basically battalion / starter boxes. I think they're called war hosts. You can pay honestly less than, let's say, $150 for a decent army that won't get rolled over. I feel like in a lot of game systems, starter sets kind of trick you, and when you put it on the table, honestly, if you don't play someone else who has a starter set, you'll probably lose. But for MESBG, what you pay for can actually do well, again tying back to the first point. Because the rules are well written, because the game is honestly pretty well balanced, you have a fighting chance. For the third pro, I would consider MESBG to be a low model count. Now, this point could tie in to the last point of being cost efficient. But from my past experiences 3 years ago from the last edition to what I saw at the current Nova Open, I would confidently say most average armies would be 35 models to 50 models. And if you play Warhammer the Old World, you know a core regiment might be 20 to 25 models. So this game system is very low because it is a large skirmish game. By having those low numbers, it also means it is much faster to paint your armies. Lord of the Rings is more of a, I'm going to say historical scale when compared to Age of Sigmar, Warhammer 40k, and even the Old World. They're more heroic scaled. Because Lord of the Rings has more historically sized miniatures, they're much easier to paint, and with the low model count, it means you don't have to spend so many hours and even months trying to get an army completed. Now, again, if you're a hobbyist, you love to paint, you can ignore this point. But for the average wargamer, you can actually put your army on the table, fully painted, rather than staring at your horde of gray. I know a lot of you guys probably have wives, kids, works, so the hobby time is limited. So I know a lot of you would rather play games with painted miniatures than be painting said miniatures. The fourth pro would be the world setting. So let's be real, if you're playing Games Workshop, if you're in wargaming and nerd culture, you 100% have watched either Peter Jackson's amazing trilogy or his not so amazing Hobbit trilogy. So regardless, I think everyone who plays these types of games have been introduced to Tolkien and his work. And I think we all can't deny Lord of the Rings, especially the movies, are amazing. So if you're a fan of the movies, or if you're more of a pure Tolkien fan who reads the books and you know there are differences, this game system gets to showcase the things you love. And I would say I do have a newfound appreciation for this setting. I would say the fifth pro for this game system is the terrain. Now, if you watched my Nova Open GT recap, or you've been attending events, or you've seen the photos on the Facebook group, because MESBG is more skirmish based, the tables and the terrain you play on are absolutely beautiful and fantastic. A big hats off to Devin, who runs the Nova Open. His tables are dead drop gorgeous. So many capture the scenes from the movies or from the books. So I would say if you see photos of Middle-earth tournaments, you'll see not only do your beautiful miniatures get to play against another beautiful army, you get to play on a beautiful table that is so interactive. So that's a huge selling point for me, as we all grew up reading White Dwarf, and sometimes having two painted armies on a beautiful table makes you feel like you're playing in a White Dwarf magazine. And I think growing up reading that, it feels like a childhood dream achieved. So for the last pro I'll give MESBG is the games feel good for the 2-hour mark. What I mean by that is when you go to an event, I personally feel like I'm not exhausted. I want to play more afterwards. I feel like coming from Warhammer the Old World, maybe not quite a quarter, maybe 10% of the event don't get to finish all 6 rounds for the game, even though they're given 3 hours. When you look at Middle-earth, I feel like everyone finished accordingly by the 2-hour mark. Now, there is a small discrepancy. Middle-earth technically doesn't have a set number of turns. However, from what I saw, my past experiences, I do feel like 2 hours allows almost 99% of the event or games for Middle-earth to feel like you played a good amount. There's no regrets. There's no feeling like your opponent timed you out. Now again, there could be cases of this, but overall, I do believe MESBG games go very fast. They go smoothly due to the previous pros. The game is well written, it's intuitive, and it flows very well. And now onto a few cons for MESBG. So the first one is going to be the army building. Now this con would only affect you if you played the last edition. Army building has changed quite a bit. Back then, you could theoretically take whoever you wanted based off a ally matrix. This current edition, they kind of broke it down into legendary legions or detachments or arcane journal specific armies like you would know from Warhammer the Old World. Now the reason I do consider this a con is if you did take a break from last edition like I did and you come into this current edition, it may shell shock you and it may put you off, so I do want to consider this as a con. The second con would actually have to be the aesthetic. If you are a fan of high fantasy, like you come from Warhammer Fantasy, Age of Sigmar, I don't believe this game may be for you. I have in the past tried convincing a couple of friends who played those games primarily to give Lord of the Rings a try. However, they said it was lacking a lot of the modern plastic aesthetic or the high fantasy that they're used to. Again, a very specific con, but I do want to note any that I could think of / those who would want to play the game, this is actually something to consider. And for the last con, I'm going to be very honest, there are always going to be slight imbalances in units and certain army lists. Currently, I believe monsters and eagles are a bit overpowered. Now again, this isn't enough to make the game broken, but I do want to be transparent. This is the feedback I got from the Nova Open and just my own research. As I play more games, I will probably adjust my viewpoint, but it isn't enough to dissuade me. But for you guys, I wanted to cover all of the cons I could possibly think of. And there you guys have it. I had a lot of fun with this quick rambling video. I think I will be producing more of these kind of overviews for all the game systems I play, as I do play quite a bit of them and they all have their pros and cons. But I do want to encourage people to give this game a chance if you're in the market for a new game system. There is a big community, especially in the DMV area, and a lot of events to attend. So I just want to give a spotlight onto the Middle-earth strategy battle game.